Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review for you all. This movie is a horror film from the UK, English language, released in the year 2025, directed by Danny Boyle, and this film is called 28 Years Later. So 28 Years Later takes place after the rage virus has completely wiped out the UK. It has been quarantined from the rest of the world, so the survivors have to fend for themselves. And so we realise that the survivors are actually taking refuge on this secluded island that is connected to the mainland through a stretch of road that is cut off during high tide. So they're well protected, and they've managed to establish a society that has taken a long time to build, and so they don't want this society to collapse, so they're going to do everything in order to protect it. But then the main character, a young child, he's actually come to the age now where it's time for him to venture into the mainland and see the real world and for what it is. And so he has to hunt a few infected to actually understand what it is to defend yourself, and at the same time he's going to actually uncover some hidden truths that force him to see the world in a completely different way than what he's used to. So what happens at that point on is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on 28 Years Later. This was one of the most anticipated horror films that I've ever seen. This is a film that I wanted to watch for so long, over 20 years. I wanted the third installment of 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later, and I was waiting for that third movie to come for so long. And so when I realised that 28 Years Later was finally coming out, you can imagine the excitement that I had. Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, the writer, they're actually back for this film. They created the first film 28 Days Later, so that was another reason to be really excited. And this is a film that's really split audiences down the middle. Some people loved it, some people hated it, and so it was daring to be different, and that was another reason to be really excited. So I was really hyped to see this film. I know that's very dangerous to set expectations to an unrealistic level, but when you've been waiting this long for this film, you can't help but feel that sense of excitement. I was hoping that it was going to deliver something that I would not forget. And after watching 28 Years Later, that's exactly what I got. Now I can't really understand people hating this film. In a world of generic remakes, things that you've seen before, recycled rubbish, when it comes to a different film, a lot of people don't like that, but yet they're going to complain that they get generic movies, and so I don't really know how they can win. And so a lot of people say that this is a very slow film. If you go in with the expectation that it's going to be like the first and second movie, you're not going to like this movie at all. But if you want a horror film with a lot of humanity thrown in and a lot of warmth and emotion, then this is a film that you definitely have to watch. This is expertly directed and it's expertly written. These characters were absolutely phenomenal. It shows you that there is a level of warmth in the very harsh and unforgiving world that 28 Years Later is depicting. This is a world where it's every man for himself, and that on the mainland it's just survival of the fittest, but on this island they've established this sense of community, they've established this loving bond between each other, and you could really feel that, and it really seeps through the screen and it actually captures the audience. And so the character development I thought was absolutely fantastic, and at the same time it does have that horror element that is going to appease to a lot of 28 Years Later and 28 Weeks Later fans. So at the start of the movie you have a level of intrigue. You don't know exactly what's on the mainland. You know that this community is very safe and connected, but there's always that sense that maybe something is going to happen to this community, and so I always really like that. But it doesn't go down that road that you would expect, and so it does have formulas that it promises, but it doesn't deliver on those formulas, and that's something that I really like, because that would have made it very generic. So I kind of thought to myself, this is how it's going to transpire, but it doesn't go that way. And so again, that's something that I really appreciated, and that's something that I can understand people hating, because you have to have that sense of control. You have to know what's going on, and when you don't know what's going on and the director pulls the rug from under you, this is where the disorientation comes in. And I love movies that make me feel vulnerable, and this movie made me feel extremely vulnerable. It's because it's through the emotion of that Alex Garland painted these characters. This acting was absolutely sublime. I really like Ralph Fiennes' character. He was absolutely fantastic. I'm not going to give anything away, but his character was very misunderstood, and the whole film has that level of misunderstanding. And when you actually understand what this movie is all about, this is where it really does hit you on an emotional level. So I thought as though it was absolutely fantastic. It wasn't slow at all. There are some horror set pieces that are absolutely horrific. I really like the infected and how they've evolved, and there were some moments that just had me on the edge of my seat. It's very suspenseful, and it's very thrilling. The action set pieces were very well choreographed. There's a sense of complete chaos that the film has, and that's through the camera visuals, and I really liked some of the music and also some clips from history. And so when it integrates that into the film, it just has that really disorientating quality about it. And that's something that 28 Days Later had, and that's something that 28 Years Later had. And that was something that 28 Weeks Later was missing. And you could tell that it was a different director in 28 Weeks Later. 28 Weeks Later was still a very good film, but it didn't have that disorientating sort of vulnerability that 28 Days Later and 28 Years Later has. And so it's a typical sort of Danny Boyle experience. With the visuals, I thought, as I said, it's very chaotic, it's very anxiety-inducing. And so as far as horror is concerned, I thought thought as though he really nailed it. The setting of the mainland was fantastic, and there were some moments that just had me on the edge. As I said, it's the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and it was just absolutely fantastic as far as horror is concerned. But the icing on the cake was that character development. And so when the horror set pieces aren't taking place, there's a level of mystery to the story that keeps you captivated. And so when the next horror set piece comes in, it has even more impact because you don't want the characters to suffer what has happened to the majority of the UK. And so I thought that was phenomenal. It's a fairly long film. It goes for nearly 2 hours, but I never felt as though there was any wasted moment. So the end of the film is very, very controversial. A lot of people have their opinion on it. I loved it. I just thought as though it took me completely by surprise. It's completely out of the blue how this movie finishes, but it stays true to what the whole film was, that level of unpredictability. And so unpredictability, it can produce anger from audiences because, as I said, you like to stay in control, but this is a film where a director who really knows what he's doing, and this is the first movie of what hopefully is going to be a new trilogy, and so that's a stepping stone to what the second film is going to be about. And so in today's world, you know, attention spans are very, very low. People want explosions and chases and, you know, zombies tearing people apart at every second. If you're after that, 28 years later, it's definitely not for you. But if you're after something that is expertly handled as far as horror is concerned and expertly handled as far as psychological drama is concerned, this is a movie for you. This is a movie about people coping in a really harsh situation. There's a lot of symbolism that this movie has. This is a film about, you know, going from the island to the mainland. It could be seen as, you know, going from a child to an adult, and you're having to fend for yourself. And so the symbolism shows that it has a lot of layers, and those layers really contribute to something that you don't see very often. And I, for one, absolutely love this movie. I can understand why people didn't like it if you have that expectation that it's going to be like the first two, but for me, I want things to evolve. I want things to change, and one of those changes comes in horror films, and so for that I really have to applaud this director. If I had issues with the movie, some of the editing here and there in the action set pieces was a little bit off-putting. But again, that contributed to the overall, you know, chaotic sense that the film had. But that was only a very minuscule problem in what was a movie that I absolutely loved. There's human emotion that actually hit me quite hard. If you see the film, you'll know exactly what I mean. I wasn't expecting that. And so for that, I absolutely appreciated this movie. It is a very, very horrific movie. It's a very brutal film, but at the same time, an absolutely beautiful film about humanity within an area that has completely lost it. So I absolutely love this film. Go out there and see it. I'm going to give this movie 4.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.